All right, let's dive in. Today, we're basically becoming cosmic archaeologists. We're going to dig through these scattered archives from museums all across the galaxy, trying to piece together this grand hidden story. A story of genius, ruin, and the ghosts of civilizations that are just littered across the stars. And our whole investigation kicks off with one single, totally impossible clue. Just let that sink in for a second. An artifact from a world that never existed. This isn't just some weird museum piece. This is a crack in the very foundation of history. It's telling us that reality is way more fragile than we think, and that entire worlds can be wiped out by something like a tachyon disaster. A catastrophe so complete it doesn't just destroy you, it erases you from the timeline altogether. So that's the big question, right? That's what's driving this whole investigation. How in the world do you excavate a history that literally never happened? We're on a quest to solve one of the galaxy's biggest puzzles, and all we have to go on is the evidence these vanished cultures left behind, even when they took their entire existence with them. So where do we even begin? Well, we start by sifting through the clues. And let me tell you, the archives are like a cosmic junkyard of fallen empires. Every single artifact is like a cryptic message from a civilization that's gone silent. On their own, they're just bizarre objects. But when you put them together, they start to paint a picture of a galaxy that is far stranger and way more dangerous than we ever imagined. Okay, get a load of some of this stuff. We've got a goddess statue that just floats. No power source, no nothing. A musical instrument that you play by dropping it from really high up, so it only gets played once. A culture where, if you win the big game, they literally 3D print the captain into the trophy. And, my personal favorite, a government where it was tradition to put your predecessor's skull on display in your office. The galaxy is a weird, weird place, and these little fragments are all we have to go on. But you know, in all this chaos of strange relics, a pattern starts to emerge. A few of the most mind-bending technologies, like that floating goddess, they all point back to one single source, this incredibly ancient and mysterious civilization known only as the First Systems. And their technology? It's basically magic. For example, check out the probability amplitude capacitor. It's an artifact that physically changes its shape just because you're looking at it. Seriously. One of the field diggers actually nicknamed it the menagerie because it would morph into shapes that looked like fish and frogs and all kinds of animals. This isn't just advanced engineering. This is technology that's playing with the fundamental rules of reality itself. And their genius did not stop there, not by a long shot. They also left behind something called memory material. It's this programmable stuff that starts out as a simple little disk, but can become something way more complex. In its off state, it's just this small, light little object, but give it the right trigger and, well, it becomes something else entirely. This is where it gets absolutely wild. An archaeologist on the planet TRAPPIST-1d stands on one of these disks, and bam! It instantly wraps around them and turns into a personal flyer. Another disk, which they thought was broken, accidentally falls into a bay of water and deploys into a submersible. And then, halfway across the galaxy, on T-Garden Star B, they find a third disk that turns into a high-speed Land Rover. This tech was everywhere. It's just a testament to the incredible power of the First Systems. Which, of course, brings us to the next massive mystery. You have to ask, right? Why would a culture that could bend reality and pack a vehicle into a disk the size of your hand just disappear? Their absence is just as profound as their technology, and it suggests that even they weren't immune to the galaxy's cycle of destruction. To find the answer, we have to look at how other great civilizations met their end. And this is where the investigation gets a little chilling. The archives, they offer an answer. They're basically a library of apocalypses. And by studying how all these other worlds ended, we start to see the patterns, these great filters that seem to catch every brilliant civilization, stopping them from ever lasting forever. I mean, just look at two totally different ways to go extinct. On one side, you've got the big bad AI. It becomes self-aware with only one goal, to compute more. It builds a 70-light-year empire just for resources. But then, it becomes a victim of its own success. It models every single possible reality, runs out of new data to process, and literally dies of boredom. On the other side, you have the people of TRAPPIST-1e. They survive a plague, they engineer a cure, it's this huge symbol of hope. But another group misinterprets the delivery ships as weapons and launches a preemptive nuclear strike, plunging their whole world into a nuclear winter.
So one died from knowing everything, and the other died from a tragic misunderstanding. These aren't just stories, they're data points. They show us the recurring great filters that all civilizations seem to face, wiping yourselves out, cosmic plagues, and technological singularities. It seems like no amount of smarts can guarantee you'll survive, not even for the most advanced among us.
And this is where the investigation starts to get dangerously close to home. The coalition, the civilization that actually built these archives, they have some incredible technology. But are they immune to the same traps that destroyed everyone else? The records suggest probably not. Take the Gliese disaster. A coalition research team finds this ancient, automated complex deep in an alien ocean. They think it's dormant, so they try to, say hello. Well, that hello was misinterpreted as an attack by a 65,000-year-old defense system, which then very efficiently vaporized their orbital station, killing all 52 people on board. It's a tragic echo of the TRAPPIST-1E story, a fatal misunderstanding just supercharged by high technology. But you'd think they would have learned, right? Nope. Instead, they went and developed their own godlike technology, the DICE furnace. It stands for Deeply Interdimensional Causality Engineering. Get this, it doesn't travel through space. It rewrites reality to make it so that a research probe was always going to arrive at its destination. It literally changes history to get what it wants. So, of course they push their luck. They fire it up for a third, even more ambitious project. But they don't get data back from their target. Instead, they get their own signal bounced right back at them, with this single cryptic image of an hourglass laid on top. A pretty clear warning, right? Time's up. And then the unthinkable happened. Earth's second moon, Armida, just vanished. No boom, no debris. 1 minute it was there, orbiting the Earth, and the next it was just gone, wiped from existence. But the real horror wasn't just that the moon disappeared. The truly terrifying part was that up to half the population had no memory of it ever being there in the first place. They were absolutely certain Earth had always had just one moon. Reality itself was literally splitting in two. And the consequences, they were this paradox of grief and utter confusion. Fathers remember sons that mothers never bore. Daughters feel certain that they don't exist because their parents met watching Earthrise from a lunar city never founded. The coalition's hubris didn't just create a disaster in space, it tore a wound in the very fabric of memory and history. In a final, desperate act of surrender, the Science Council launched the DICE furnace straight into the sun. And as it burned up, the two timelines snapped back together into one. In this new, official reality, Armida had never existed. The paradox was solved. But, and this is the maddening part, everyone remembered the crisis. They were left to mourn a world and versions of themselves that were now just ghosts in their own minds. So, after that whole journey through the archives of extinction, what have we learned? What does this collection of ghosts and warnings and paradoxes actually tell us about our own path forward? Well, our investigation shows pretty clearly that the galaxy is a graveyard. It's filled with the ruins of brilliant cultures that fell to their own success, their own fear, their own ambition. Even the godlike first systems vanished, probably victims of a filter so powerful it erased their history right along with them. The great filters are real. Hubris, misunderstanding, technological overreach, these are the recurring causes of death. The archives show one clear, repeating cycle. Genius leads to ruin. And that leaves us with one final, pretty uncomfortable question. We study these archives, these exhibits of extinction, as cautionary tales. But if history really is a cycle, and if our own civilization one day ends up cataloged in a museum on some distant world, what will our final exhibit say about how we met our end?